technical chat.
You know, we obviously won't start streaming until
Technical chat.
So how come it's coming to this one as well?
Things got nothing was not here.
So how come it's coming to this one as well? Is it because it's playing?
Oh, you started the stream.
I did?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, crap.
Like, I need some thought.
So what now?
Okay. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to hand it off. Julianne, Steve, and Brad, thanks for teaching us about operations. Steve knows all of this, but I needed a partner.
Well, I can kind of kick us off here, Melissa. If you, I don't know if you happen to have close at hand the board ends policy and the 4 goals. There's the attachment that lists the operational systems that we will align and that will align and support academically effective and sustainable organization. And the first 2 are legally required policies and staff compensation, development, evaluation, and treatment of staff. So I'll speak to those 2, and then I'll pass the baton to Brad. As to legally required policies, one of the things that's a little bit peculiar is that we have policy topics that are spread throughout the organization. So our organization has a lot of policy related to instruction and management of students, which even on the instruction side of the house are different things, right? The instruction aspect of it, behavior management aspect of it. But then we also have personnel policies, we have facilities policies, we have finance policies. And so this is an area that is managed by various of us. So as relates to the legally required piece of it, I think that the various folks have responsibility for managing policy, then have means by which they stay attuned to what pieces need to be reviewed, updated, what our legislative review process looks like. And in HR, of course, we have processes for that, for staying abreast of what needs to be maintained, what needs to be revised with changes, legislative and court changes, and the other groups do as well. This feels like a fairly broad topic to speak to insofar as I think the different areas probably have different ways of reporting out. The instruction side, I think, has different ways that they report out to all y'all on the academic pieces of this, and versus the ways that ourselves with personnel, or Brad with facilities, Julianne with safety, and Brad also with finance, might report out to all y'all. So Brad or Julianne, if there's anything you want to jump in and offer on these topics, if not, I'll move on to the other topic. Policy, of course, being the area that the board probably is most frequently directly involved in. This is probably the one that requires the least amount of discussion operationally from those of us on the administrative team. Okay.
I would actually add one thing as not as a listener to this, but as a participant in it. And then how do we then make sure that that policy is embedded into practice in the system for any kind, whether it's operational, facilities based, having mechanisms, or instructional for that matter, having mechanisms to ensure that that policy is now well understood and followed.
I think one that we all had to grapple with at the end of the last year, and we'll have activity associated with as we move into the beginning of this year, is the ways in which we had a building level autonomy exercised in relation to a safety policy that we believe it is clear facially, and that the message on the appropriateness of that being followed district wide was intact. But clearly we had some kind of a divide because we that isn't how it wound up in practice. So yeah, there's as an illustration, that's an area that we wrapped up the school year and we'll be going into the school year with work on. And again, Brad and Julianne, if there's anything you want to add, please jump in. Otherwise, I can move to the next topic.
Go for it. I think it would be helpful to just try to go top to bottom of the 10 if that works for everybody.
Okay,
Thanks.
so the next one, I meant jump in on the policy issue as opposed to the other areas. But so the next one, staff compensation, development, evaluation, treatment of staff. The thing that was our predominant area of work this past year, I would say probably 3 areas. One, just creating stability in the course of administrative transition, myself moving into the position, establishing greater consistency and structure around practices, procedures, and systems. A big piece of that was the establishment of some HR infrastructure in the form of the UKG HRIS system that we have acquired and are in the process of building. And then also working on the areas that we will expand, have been and continue to expand equity-related practices, and particularly diversification-related practices in our recruitment and hiring, and also what practices we can bring to retention in relation to diversity. And so those have been the areas that were our great focus this past year. I think that there are pieces of those that will continue to be our focus this coming year as we continue to try to establish, again, continuing development of structure and systems. We've been talking, for example, just this is a little one, but we've been talking about more cohesion around us having criteria for decision making as relates to classification, reclassification, and so there remains work for us to do in our area around that. And the goal in having greater consistency of structure is that it's more transparent and it's more predictable for the folks around us that are trying to understand what it is that we're doing, why it is we're doing what we're doing, and the ways that we might build out on other aspects of the HR work. Steve, is there anything you wanted me to add to that area? Okay, with that, I will pass the baton.
Okay, Melissa, any questions for Steve before we hit the next items?
No, I'm gonna hold on that.
Okay, sounds good. Moving on then to financial planning and administration. I'm referring to the same document that Steve Heron pointed us to.
Yeah, I'm following along with you.
Okay, good. All right. You can see under that one, financial systems and processes that encourage stakeholder feedback. You can see the bullet points there, and there are 2 of them that refer to aligning to goals and strategies. And of course, we're going through that work right now. We're working through the goals. The next step would be to produce strategies that align with those goals. And so that's something we should do and do every year when it relates to the budget. That it's critical that the resources that we receive are in alignment with those goals. And so how do we make sure we do that? It's through feedback. It's through working with leadership and other groups to make sure that we are in alignment. The difficulty comes in trying to report out that we are using those resources directly in alignment. It's hard to draw a line from, a line in our budget document directly back to a goal. We try to do that in the, you've noticed recently the narrative in our budget document up front, and we try to do that more in a narrative format than a chart or something like that. And so that'll be a work in process every year as we work to improve that document. One of the areas that I guess it's a component of that third bullet point. It talks about the reserves. There's a lot of reason for reserves, and that I think that's a discussion that we should have probably more regularly. as a district, even with the board, as we get into talking about the, if we stick with the executive limitations, talk about the reserves and what that should be, kind of the reasons for having reserves. I think that's a good discussion to have at a high level, once a year or every other year, something like that. So those would be a couple of strategies, I guess, under the financial planning and administration. Facilities, it feels like we've talked a lot about facilities this year. Obviously the biggest strategy we have is to, for this year, would be to make sure that bond passes. That's a huge, that would be a huge step forward in the management, the maintenance of our facilities, to kind of keep that standard, to provide, one of the board members was talking about, provide that space, or that, that facility that our students need to be successful. And so that would be a huge step in continuing that. We've been successful in the most recent years. I believe we do an excellent job of maintaining our facilities and kind of looking to the future, and how do we provide those spaces that are necessary to make sure the students today and 20 years from now, if possible, have the space they need to be successful. And so that's a big, we're getting kind of beyond a year, but that's what we think about and strive for every year. And that's a little bit of that second bullet there. Some of the day-to-day kind of stuff, we're looking at our land inventory all the time. Part of that is kind of turning that over if there's certain pieces of land that we don't believe we'll have a need for. How do we turn that into land that we do have a need for? Whether it's through trades or sell and put it in a land bank and use it. In addition, you heard through the sites facilities process that concept of partnering with agencies on some of these smaller pieces of land to kind of move into, try to provide some of that affordable housing or employee housing, see if those concepts work for us. We just had meetings today on that, talking more about that. And so, and I'll leave it there for facilities. I know we're short on time and got a lot to go through. Transportation, we're very fortunate this year. We've been really successful, and I'm knocking on wood, but we've been really successful in hiring bus drivers going into the school year. And so we do feel fortunate. Our main goal is to, of course, provide more service to more students, especially those students that have a greater need. And you can see that in the bullet points that we have listed there. It's all about service. And our transportation department, they've gone through, just like we all have, a couple of years where they've had to dial back what they can provide just because they didn't have the resources. They didn't have the staff to provide the service level that they want to provide or that they used to provide. And so we're trying to kind of reinvent what that routing looks like and really get out there and provide services to the where the greatest need is. We have to provide a base level of service. Beyond that, we're looking at where that greatest need is. And currently we're working on a policy and AR revision that speaks to that. That really lets our community understand kind of how we, if we get into a place where we can provide a little bit more service based on our resources, how are we going to make those decisions? And it provides that transparency to the community and how we do that. And I will just mention, because it's the last bullet under transportation, alternative fuel fleet, I'm going to mention the electric bus again, because we still don't have it, but we've shortened the timeline, or we've heard that it's coming in November. So fingers crossed that we get it in just in time for winter. We'll get to try it in in the toughest part of our climate here. So really looking forward to that. It's been a long time, long wait, but we're looking forward to it. Child nutrition, again, coming out of, we've been very fortunate in that we could provide thousands of meals free of charge over the last couple of years. And I think that we've heard over and over how the community, wishes we could continue. We do too. Unfortunately, that's not the way the National School Lunch Program works going forward. So we're moving back to what it was like pre-pandemic. Again, we're looking at how do we, for this next year, how do we get kids safely back into cafeterias to eat? We want them all back into the cafeteria if possible. We're looking at how do we increase the number of students eating these hot meals, these nutritious hot meals. We have a lot of folks that still bring a sack lunch, and I think it's a matter of providing them a lunch to kind of see what it's like. They're constantly working on with our chef and our nutritionist, nutritious, delicious meals. So the chef is always working on different recipes to that she believes will resonate with students, and so that's kind of the focus this year, kind of getting back to what we used to do, and but trying to get more students eating these hot meals in the cafeteria. That's kind of their focus this year. We do have an app in place that shares all of the nutrition information on all of our meals. I've lost the name of it now. Julianne, do you remember what it is?
NutriSlice.
NutriSlice. There you go. So if you want to look at that, Melissa, you can. It's got a lot of great information on every, not the meal as a whole, but each individual serving of whatever it is they're serving that day. All of that information is out there.
Let's end up IT so that we get Julianne in, because we got
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll be really brief on safety, because I think we did a good job of that last week. But just as a reminder on safety, in case we have any community members watching, we are going to double down on training, making sure that we have set clear, coherent, common expectations around safety, making sure that physical safety that we've put in place thanks to the community support is matched by staff understanding of expectations and being able to deliver on those, and to ensure that we are training to behavioral expectations that ensure that safer, better learning environment for students. On the communication side, transparency is a theme I think I'm hearing here in this room. We're going to ensure that we're communicating early, often, and with messages that are easily understandable to all of our publics, ensuring that community piece of two-way communication is truly two-way communication. I think that's something we can always do better. Not expecting people to come to a website, making sure if you send communication out, how are we going to receive two-way communication back? And some of that modeling, I think this year that I would like to see us use is modeling after an experience officer from the public sector side, where you're really thinking of your stakeholders as your clients and what is it that we can do better. So that type of work is really where I want to see us going. And I think that's where we all want to go based on the bullets you have here. A big opportunity area for us and the board is making sure that we have communication as a priority, and it's emphasized through district policy. That's something that at a national best practice would be ensuring that communications is really weaved into all that we're doing. Continuing to have a good crisis communication plan, continuing to make sure our parents know how to get information in a crisis and what to do in a crisis, of course, ties right back to safety, and continuing to build capacity. So, and that is capacity is not just in the communications team, but all of the departments, schools, parents, students, even. We've had flutters of greatness with students helping us communicate as well. So telling the stories, and also making sure that people have the communication that they need to make good decisions for their students and families. So super hot wash. Go ahead, Melissa.
Two quick things. Communications, and that capacity piece really resonates. And I think one of the pieces is just that loose tight. And when we send things, I know that this has come back, but just the capacity of our building leadership to really be on point with communication, I think has come up. And then back to the main room, on staff evaluation and development, it might come up in the other 3 goals, but it feels like that piece, there might be something there, and it might be that it's in service. It might be covered in the other 3 goal areas.
Thank you,
But,
Melissa
yeah.
and Steve. Oh, sorry.
Yep.
It's like we literally go back to the main room, all of us, or just
Yep.
you two?
No, you guys can stay if you want.
Okay,
Steve,
thank you.
go back. Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Hey, Brad. Will you
Are
print
we
something?
still recorded? Recorded
Oh.
right here?
Maybe.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to ask you anyway. Can you print something for me if I send it to you tonight before you leave?
Yeah.
Thank
What do
you.
you want me to do? It, print it, and then what?
Either put it on your desk or my desk. I still can't use the printer.
Okay.
Thank you. Or you can just leave it on the
Probably
counter.
have a class on that, on how to use the printer.
I know, I need IT's help. They thought it worked.
I will do that.
Okay, thank you. I'll send it after we're done here.
Back momentarily.
Hey, Brad and Julianne, and it looks like Steve. Melissa wants to, if you could go join the main room, please.
On our way, Matt.
Thank you.
Steve, join the main room, please. We just got that direction.
Yep, I heard it.
Okay.
Operations.
Lucky you.
Yeah, I love it. I'm actually really glad this is the category. Thanks for including us in this.
Thanks for including us.
Right.
Good to see everyone.
All right, Steve, why don't we just follow what we did last time? You want to kick
Yep.
us off?
I
Thank
will-
you.
I will kick us off and jump right in. So I don't know if all y'all have close at hand the PDF of the board ends policy, the governance policy, with the 4 goals and the attachment that has the 4 goals and then the executive limitations. All y'all happen to have those close at hand?
I do not. Is it possible? I mean, I can search for it, but if it's possible to put it at the top of my email box, that would be
I'll
awesome.
send it to you. Let me send it. Marcus, do you want it?
Thanks. Yes.
In the meantime, I'll go ahead and jump in, and then we can circle back if there's any questions about it. So in the operations systems goal, there are 9 different limitations. So it's one that's loaded up, a lot of variety. And so I'm going to take the first couple and then pass the baton. I'm going to move through it a little quickly. I think that I probably took more than my fair share of this last time, so I'm going to move a little bit more quickly, and feel free to circle back with questions that you might have. So the first of them is legally required policies. And one of the peculiarities is that in our organization, there's a policy that ranges all over the organization. You know, we've got on the academics side of the house, we've got instruction related, we've got student discipline or behavior related. On the operations side, we've got personnel related, we've got facilities related, we've got finance related, we've got safety related. So this particular category, which is to say legally required policies, there's a big chunk of it that's operational. There's also chunks of it that are on the instructional side of the house. And it is spread throughout the operations side. So it's not as if there's a single place where we can report out on our activities around this. So fundamentally, the different functional areas have different ways that they stay abreast of what's legally required. Add policy if policy needs to be created. Revise policy if policy needs to be revised. We have a process in HR that we try to use to stay abreast of the legislative sessions and to stay abreast of legal decisions. But fundamentally, the goal is to be able to stay abreast of revisions, directions come out of the legislature either to adopt new policy, revise policy, and to make those changes. Brad or Julianne, do you want to add anything on the topic of legally required policies?
Just, I think the board's clear on the difference between a AP and an AR. That would be the only thing.
And operationally, this is the area that I think all y'all are routinely in discussions and exposed to, and so it probably is one that is most immediately familiar anyway.
Steve, one thing I might bring up, I don't think you said it, but these are any changes, any new are reviewed by our attorney as well.
Yeah. Okay. I did not say that, so thanks for adding that, Brad. So the second executive limitation on this attachment sheet relates to HR arena, functional arena. So staff compensation, staff development, staff evaluation, treatment of staff. And just kind of looking back and looking forward, looking back over the last year, I'd say that the priority in HR, honestly, kind of 3 big priorities. One, and probably the most immediate as I came in, was just the transition of new leadership with myself arriving and stabilization of the staff. We had a significant amount of turnover. I think in my first month, we had 3 folks who departed and we had to do some restructuring. And incidentally, I should add, those were 3 people who I think had been planning to leave before my arrival. So it wasn't on account of my arrival, just for clarification. So there was definitely a transitional time and stabilization. The second thing is that we did not have significant structure or structured systems or structured processes in HR. The biggest difficulty was in our HR information systems or lack thereof. And so the dive into identification of how we could change that has been a really, really big push for this past year. And we've identified a program, a application, purchased it, and we're in the process of blueprinting it and getting ready for implementation of it now. One of the reasons I think that is super important is that before we can make evidence-based decisions, we've got to be able to do the analytics on what the information is. And if we don't have, if our information is maintained in systems that make the examination of it, the analysis of it, and the planning based upon it impossible or implausible, that's hampering to the organization in unacceptable ways. And so the reason that I prioritized and have consistently talked about it being a priority to have robust HRIS system is because of our ability to make then decisions based on data instead of based on supposition. The last big effort in HR this past year has been what I would call applied DI practices, identifying the way we can operation around diversity, equity, and inclusion. The probably most concrete initiatives that we've been able to begin working on are our recruiting processes, our processes for bringing student teachers into the organization, and that development of diversity among the staff. We're also looking at in our responsibility as the pocket of the organization that holds the responsibility for the evaluation process. We're looking at how do we begin to incorporate into evaluation of folks' familiarity with and application of equity considerations in the course of their work. And so that's another thing that we'll be doing in the coming year, is looking at how does that fit into an evaluative tool. With that, I'll pass the baton to Brad, and then we can answer questions or field questions at the end.
Okay, Marcus and Carrie, I'm going to move through. There's 5 of them in a row here, so I'll move through fairly quickly in the short time that we have. First one is financial planning and administration. You can see the bullet points there. A couple of them refer to aligning with our goals and strategies, and of course we're working through the goals now. That's part of tonight. Following that work, the staff, the district will go to work on what those strategies are that assure that we hit those goals. And so a lot of the work around the budget, a lot of the financial information that we produce is we do so trying to align to those goals, of course, and those strategies. And so that'll be a lot of the work that we have in front of us this year and into next year as we restate those goals and start to look closer at those strategies. I think we've done that pretty well in our budgeting process. We've improved that a lot through encouragement and prodding from Carrie. We include now the narrative at the front of the document that tries to explain that not only the budget process, but the kind of those investments that we have that are we believe are directly in alignment with the goals we have in place today. And so we'll continue that practice. One of the items, one of the other bullet points you can see refers to our reserves. That's a critical component of any entity, but in a school district especially. And so I think that's a discussion that we should and can have more often. Not only what the amount is, but why do we have it? What's the purpose of reserves? If you look across districts in the state and the nation, you're going to see different levels. And so that's something that I would like to focus on over the next year or two, is have that discussion about why, what's the purpose of the reserve, and then kind of circle in on what should that amount be. We've had a pretty set amount for the last, number of years at 5% of resources. Maybe that's the right level. Maybe that's the comfortable level, but it doesn't hurt to have that discussion. Facilities, we've talked a lot about facilities in the last year, in the last number of years, actually. And so I won't spend a lot of time here. You're both very aware of the planning process we have in place around our facilities. It has led to the site's facilities plan has led to a list of needs. You guys, through a recommendation from Dr. Cook, opted to put a levy on the ballot. And so over the next year, our goal is to provide as much information as we can to the community to allow them to understand what that levy is about, make a good decision come November. And then moving beyond that is, we're always, and I don't remember which board member said it earlier, is our goal is to always provide that space that allows our students to be successful in school. And so what that looks like isn't always up to us. It should be and is up to those instructional leaders, what that space needs to look like and feel like. And so we rely on our instructional leaders and a lot of research to determine that. But we try to build for not just today, but many years into the future. So our facilities are relevant long term. Land inventory, part of that process was looking at the inventory we have. You're aware that our short term and a longer term goal is to try and better use that land, whether it's to sell land, put it in a reserve bank to buy land that we need in the future, or new this year or new this time is to look at other needs that may help us in other ways. So for example, affordable housing or staff housing concept, trying to look at different partnerships in the community with some of those kind of remnant pieces from our schools that we did build. And so that'll be a focus this year for our facility team and I. Moving on to student transportation. I'm sure you're very aware that over the last couple of years, we've really struggled to provide the level of service that our community is accustomed to and that we want to provide. And so we're very fortunate in that we've gone through a campaign to hire bus drivers that has been very successful, and we've been successful in hiring enough drivers to fill those routes that we have identified, and believe that we're going to get back to at least the level that we had pre-pandemic, and maybe even better as far as the service. And as we do that, we're looking not just to provide that base level of service, home to school and school to home, but additional services where we can, focused on those students that are most at need. And to that, we're looking at, I think it's a rewrite of a policy and a rewrite of an AR that makes it very clear, very transparent to our community how we make those decisions. So if a student is not within the ride zone, but it's critical that they have a ride to school to be successful, how do we make those decisions? If we have the space, if we have the capability, how do we make those decisions? And so that's something we're working on now and should have ready in the fall. And you'll see that those all come through the board, I believe now, to some degree. So you'll see that. Child nutrition. We we've been very fortunate again over the last couple of years where we've been able to provide thousands of meals free of charge to anybody that wants the meal. And unfortunately, that has gone away this year. We're more back to pre-pandemic. So again, we're looking at how do we provide that higher level of service as we kind of re-engage, with every student, try to get more students eating those hot lunches, those nutritious lunches. We do have a chef and a nutritionist on staff. They're constantly working on the recipes and the nutrition to meet not only the guidelines, but the taste buds of a 10-year-old, which is difficult at times. And so they're constantly looking for ways to make sure everybody is fed, has a nutritious meal. And in addition, all of that nutrition, we're trying to get that out to where families, parents can see exactly what's in these servings. And there's an app available. It's been out there for some time. Julianne, again, NutriSlice. Sorry, that's the name of the app. You can download it and look at it, and it has every serving of everything that's served, and I see exactly what's in it. Sorry, I'm flying through some of this stuff. And then IT, we learned a lot through the pandemic, and we're trying to apply that to our systems today, whether that's through infrastructure needs or how we provide those services, whether it's making sure we always want to make sure every student has connectivity. We're looking for new and better ways to do it. Right now we have hotspots deployed, or we did have last school year. We'll have it again this coming school year where needed. We have hotspots on demand, so anybody that needs it. We're looking for better ways to provide those services, because there are some families that don't have that cellular connectivity. And so we're looking for how do we get to those families at the place that they live. And so we're working with through the ESD, we're working through the state to try to find how do we do that. I don't know that we have a complete 100% solution yet, but we're constantly looking at that. So that's one of our goals for this, one of our strategies for this year, coming out of the pandemic. How do we continue to provide that high level of service that we did through the pandemic? With Scott McDonald in the IT director role, his focus, I can tell you, has been on that connection to our schools, to kind of those connections directly to not just the principal, but the staff at the schools, and try to identify those needs, try to come up with kind of a team, a team in his administration that works directly with schools. So it's that there's a known team that work for the schools essentially. And so it's a concept that he's trying to develop and deploy this coming year. I think it's a great concept, and I can't wait to see how well it works. And that is.
Marcus, why don't you jump in with your question? We can take questions for Brad and Steve before I take off. Answer.
Yeah, go ahead. No, you're good. Go ahead.
Did you have a question in the chat?
Nah, I sent it to you directly. We'll figure it out later.
Oh, sorry. Thanks. Okay. So Carrie, any questions for Brad or Steve?
Yeah. So much great work happening. I think when I look at the staff compensation, development, evaluation, and treatment of staff category, the thing that I am most interested in is principals and principal leadership. And so I just don't see a lot here around developing and supporting principals as the instructional leaders and leaders of our school, and just improving how they're hired, how they're trained, how they're supported. So much of this other stuff, staff satisfaction, retention, so many things are dependent on your supervisor. And so would just love personally to see more of a focus on development in general, but development of principals as a top priority.
For what it's worth, again, the interesting dichotomy within our organization is between the instructional side of the house and the operations side of the house. And I think that the organization has done a good job of consistently making professional development opportunity available around instruction, around leadership of instructors. And we are looking at what are the ways that we ensure that we are supporting administrators in leadership around other areas. So what we're trying to do is come alongside the work that TLC would do in terms of developing as leaders in immersion in instructional practice support. And we're looking to identify the ways in which we can additionally support them in their professional development as managers. It's a little strange in the environment, in the educational environment. We talk about administration. In my prior role, we talked about management. And when I first got here, I called our administrators management. I would say management this and management that, and I got a lot of funny looks. So what we're looking to do is kind of take that mentality and talk about how do we develop people as better managers as to that aspect of their work. They're unique in that they're managing educators, but they are people managers.
Yeah, I think that's really right. I think it's really dangerous when it's too separated and we really see them only on the instruction side of the house, because what happens is principals aren't getting strong evaluations. I've heard for many years that many of our principals have never been evaluated. And so like having strong HR processes and not sort of abdicating, ownership of that to the instructional side of the house, I think is just a place where things can really fall through the cracks.
I'll tell you right now that a deficiency in HR has been lack of structure and lack of structured processes. And that is, I think one of the things I do because of my background and because of the way my brain works is I bring systems thinking into this role. And I think it's really necessary. And so I agree with you. We're going to continue to look for ways in which to support them in developing, robust knowledge, skills, and abilities around those other areas of the job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carrie. In addition to that, to piggyback on Carrie, I'm 100% on that in terms of the processing piece. It's like, okay, yes, you get the principals trained, but what feedback are they getting? What information are they getting? And is it something that they can basically, shift right away, or is it something they have to work over time? Additionally, I know you talked about getting the system to talk to one another. Have we finally got that figured out where each school could hire their own people and you really didn't have it? Do we finally got that locked and loaded? That's one piece, one question in terms of that. My other piece is hiring in the sense of I'm starting to get away from using the term DEI because it keeps us from having to talk about how we really get equitable people here. What I mean is that how can we figure out a way and a system, or not just a system, but a process to be able to make sure that not only we continue to grow our own, because I know Kenzie's working on that, but my other piece is how can we continue to research and find out how we can get other people from other areas, but at the same time too, people who have the ability to start building relationships, doing what we were asking in terms of them being better relationships builders with their staff and their team.
Yeah.
So how can we continue to do those things to get people in? Yep.
Having a staff that is reflective of our student body is critically important. And that diversity piece of DEI, the diversification is multi-pronged. There's multiple levels to it. And we really are taking that, kind of full, I don't know what a good metaphor is, full buffet approach, where we're trying to have, multiple things on the table that we're trying to introduce. From our student teacher network, we've been historically limited to 2 schools where we've taken student teachers from. And as you can predict, the student body in each of those is predominantly white. So from that angle, from the angle of recruitment, from the angle of job fairs, we're looking at, for the first time, I think in the district's history, looking at job fairs down in Southern California. So we're really looking at multiple prongs on how do we attack all the different ways that we develop a more diversified workforce.
So I'm going to jump in. I think we have about 10 seconds. I thought we were going to get a 5-minute warning, but we just got the 1 minute. So I'm going to just say, I hope you learned a lot with the safety presentation last week. Happy to follow up on that. Big takeaways there that we need clear, coherent, common expectations. And we also need to be able to have expectations that those will be delivered with fidelity and some sort of enforcement on the other side. A lot of training needs to happen this year. On the communication side, continuing with those systematic, transparent communications, the systematic piece as well as making sure that our staff have information as it's going out or
Hey
prior
guys, you need
to
to go back to the
families.
main room. Sorry.
Oh, Donovan. Okay, we're out. Great. That's what you need to know. See you in a minute. In a minute.
Hi, Carrie.
Oh.
All right. So we have to tell people about ops and the operations. I have that whole document in front of me as well.
Yeah. So much.
I know. I feel like that you guys, ops team, you had the hardest task. I mean, the time was insane for us when I had 20 minutes. I don't know if 5 more minutes really helped or not, Carrie.
No, we didn't even get to Julianne.
Okay. I skipped IT because I wanted to get to Julianne. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
So as far as what everyone needs to know.
We're just listening, right? I'm just reinforcing that. Okay, thank you.
When we have questions, we're going to ask you.
I mean, I feel like the main summary was that this has been a year of and will continue to be working on systems and processes and improving our ability to kind of understand what's happening, have the data we need, have the systems we need in order to, make improvement on the ultimate outcomes that we're looking for, which I think makes a lot of sense for a district that is growing at the rate that we are. So that was one takeaway.
Mhm. Yeah.
We kind of dug in on EL 4.3. A bit.
Sorry, shuffling screens.
The
right?
staff compensation development evaluation.
Oh, yes.
Where did you guys dig in?
I would have liked to, we didn't, because I only had 20 minutes.
Okay.
So we really didn't dig in, but that was one of my two parting questions, was really on that piece, and that there wasn't as much discussion on how staff development and evaluation is one of the supports for the other three areas.
Mhm.
What did you guys dig into?
Yeah, similarly, I think we talked a little bit about the kind of delineation between HR and instruction. And so especially when you're talking about like principals and how are we ensuring that principals are both trained really well and held accountable and evaluated, that HR hasn't been as involved in that as the past. Like principals have kind of been the domain of instruction, and what can happen when there aren't a strong HR presence and strong HR processes around that kind of development and accountability. So that was one thing. Evaluation in general.
Yeah, I think another kind of theme I heard was really, it was named in the communications piece, but was present throughout, was this idea of stakeholders as clients. And so from the finance piece, the bringing a stronger focus of the actions that we're taking and the funding and how those two pieces match, which I see as, it's not just about our budget, it's about how our budget is producing a product for our clients. There was discussion about that and food and continuing to share nutrition data. I liked that piece. I'm excited to get on NutriSlice. But also just that iterative process of recipes, et cetera, because I feel like that's one of the things the board gets comments on is nutrition. And then just the safety piece, but just really throughout the conversations, what I really heard in facilities about having places that are great places of learning for our kids. I just felt like there was a through line, was not just about making sure we have making sure we have strong books, making sure we have safe facilities, et cetera, but all of the things were talked about as being in service of our kids.
Yeah, that's really, I'm glad to hear you talk about it. We didn't talk about that. I think I've always seen our district as having really strong operations and finances. I haven't heard a lot of that sort of framing of like schools as clients and families as clients. And so thinking about the feedback loop, and one thing we did at one of my prior districts was that everyone that worked in the central office had a feedback link in their email. Every single time you got an email from someone in the central office, you were able to provide feedback on them. And just that sort of mentality of like, we are there to support families and schools and wanting that feedback. So it's great to hear that is a conversation. I honestly do not know how to summarize this conversation for the whole board. Melissa, if you want to take it.
Oh, the other one that we had the question on was the systems and structures, not only to have all of the policies, but to make sure that the policies are being implemented consistently across all of our campuses. And so how do we continue to have that consistency? Consistency of implementation.
Yeah.
So maybe, and for several of these also, just to name it, we're not coming out of the pandemic's always here, but another theme was getting back to how we did things before. in the places that it makes sense to do them before. But how do we, in places where we had to go to something completely different that wasn't necessarily advantageous, how do we get back?
Another place where under information technology.
Yeah.
I don't see I'm not seeing a measure around like quality. Like the focus seems to be on like, is it safe? Does it work well? But I'm not seeing like, is information technology improving student learning or improving staff efficacy, or like, are we measuring the efficacy of IT?
It's kind of like the same question as staff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how is it developing?
Mm-hmm.
How is it developing our practice, our kids' learning?
Yeah.
Okay. We have 1 minute. If you were going to say one word, what would your word be?
Continuous improvement.
That's 2.
I know, but it's a phrase.
Okay, it's a phrase, continuous improvement.
How about you?
Mine was going to be consistency. Or I could be service or in service. I'm going to work to I wrote down all of the phrases and I'm going to make them into a sentence in our next room because we have to go, but it'll be something like developing our systems and processes in service of our students with a focus on continuous improvement and consistency and implementation.
Love it.
Okay, we got to go to their back.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you all. Appreciate you.
Julianne, sorry you still didn't get to talk. We're just back to the main room. Is that right, Fred?
Yes, that's right.
Thank you.
Yeah.